the members of the public to be heard as well. If you would like to make a comment from the public, please do so in the chat box. Sue Babakaya will be monitoring the chat box and let us know when someone submits a comment, and we will address your comment as time allows. Hopefully folks can be patient with staff as they're working through this. It's a challenging job, and we've had some technical difficulties with various board meetings kind of throughout the Commonwealth the last few days. So hopefully this one goes smoothly, but certainly no guarantees there. The required additional language from Chapter 1283 of the Code for all electronic meetings is as follows. Chapter 1283 of the 2020 Acts of Assembly, also known as the Caboose Bill, includes language addressing the ability of public bodies to conduct electronic meetings without the need for a quorum being present in a single physical location, otherwise known as an electronic meeting. This language is submitted as an amendment by the governor and approved by the General Assembly at their April 22, 2020 reconvened session. The governor subsequently signed the Caboose Bill, and the bill became effective on April 24, 2020. The Caboose Bill allows public bodies to hold electronic meetings when the governor has declared a state of emergency pursuant to Section 44-146.17 of the Code of Virginia if, I quote, the nature of the declared emergency makes it impracticable or unsafe for the public body or governing board to assemble in a single location. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the public body and the discharge of its lawful purpose, duties, and responsibilities. The Caboose Bill also has language regarding recordings and transcripts of electronic meetings. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded. This recording will be available to the public through the DCR website. Comments in the chat room will also be preserved as a public record. Official minutes of this meeting will be drafted and posted in accordance with regular procedures. The Caboose Bill does not allow the board to hold electronic meetings to discuss or transact business for any purpose at all. Rather, they may do so as long as the agenda items that the public body plans to take up are A, statutorily required, or B, necessary to continue the operations and discharge lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is the board's responsibility to determine whether the nature of the declared emergency makes it impracticable or unsafe for the public body or governing board to assemble at a single location. At the conclusion of my remarks, I will ask for a motion for the board to make this determination. If that motion fails, this electronic meeting will end at that point. Hopefully it won't fail. We are all very aware of what is going on with the pandemic and the particularly challenging situation that the Commonwealth and our country are in right now. The Caboose Bill requires compliance with provisions of Section 2.2-3708.2 of the Code. Therefore, in accordance with that section, public bodies must include a telephone number that may be used to notify the public body of any interruption in the telephone or video broadcast of the meeting. In the event that a disruption occurs, participants should contact Mr. Fletcher by phone or text at 804-317-8934. Again, that number is 804-317-8934. Additionally, if there's an interruption in the broadcast, the meeting must be suspended until public access is restored. Those provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act not addressed by the Caboose Bill remain in effect. Before we continue with the business portion of the meeting, I'll ask Mr. Fletcher to call the roll for the board members and anticipated staff. Other participants will be recorded through the chat window. If you're participating by phone and your name is not called, please call or text Mr. Fletcher at 804-317-8934. In addition, at any time you lose connection or unable to reconnect, please contact Mr. Fletcher at the same number. I will now turn it over to Mike for the calling of the roll.
Good morning. And to make things a little easier, remember you need to unmute yourself to answer. And I'll be calling the roll for all of the votes this morning in the order that the names are listed on the agenda. So that should help that a little bit. Secretary Strickler?
Present.
Mr. Lazaro?
Here.
Mr. Copenhaver?
Here.
Mr. Pollard? Mr. Ford?
Here.
Ms. Stiff?
Here.
Ms. Donner? Mr. Volk?
Here.
Dr. Casey? Dr. Casey? Ms. Imhoff?
Here.
Ms. Booth? Ms. Booth? Mr. Presley? Mr. Woodley?
Here.
Senator Marsden? Senator Stewart?
Here.
Ms. Andrews?
Present.
Mr. Beamer? Mr. Jennison?
Present.
Ms. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Secretary, you do have a quorum.
And Dave Marsden's here. I don't know if you heard me.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great news. Thanks for that, Mike. So I'll now present a recommended motion and wait for a board member to make that motion. The recommended motion is that the Virginia Land Conservation Foundation Board of Trustees certifies that the nature of the declared COVID-19 emergency makes it impracticable or unsafe for the board to assemble in a single location, and further that the agenda item to be taken up at this meeting is necessary to continue operations and discharge lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities of the board.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Fletcher, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Secretary Strickler?
Yes.
Mr. Lazaro?
Yes.
Mr. Copenhaver?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Volk?
Yes.
Dr. Casey?
Yes.
Ms. Imhoff?
Yes.
Ms. Booth? Mr. Woodley?
Yes.
Senator Marsden?
Yes.
Senator Stewart?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Beamer?
What am I voting on?
The certification of the meeting, the electronic meeting.
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Secretary, the motion carried.
Excuse me, Mike, this is Glenda.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
I can now. Yes.
I can't. I vote yes twice.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Mike, and thanks everybody. We have a meeting. It's great. I'm going to explain just quickly a little bit further about how we're going to handle participation. Again, you all have already been through this before, so it's nothing new. But everybody, except for the individual presenting the materials for an agenda item, will be muted, and once the presentation is completed, the board members and only the board members will be unmuted for discussion. Staff is going to help me with ensuring the board members are recognized when we have a question or comments, and as needed, staff will be unmuted to address any questions or concerns. Members of the public, again, will be asked to ask questions and provide input by utilizing the chat box function, and as time allows, we'll respond to those questions and comments in the chat function. So without any further delay, we'll proceed with the business of the board as outlined today in the agenda. The first thing is we'll do a call to order, and before, after now we've done a call to order, we'll do an introduction of members, and we've got a new member that we're welcoming to the board this month. We last time around welcomed Senator Dave Marsden as a trustee, and today we are welcoming Senator Richard Stewart. Senator, we're glad to see you. I'm very happy to have you on the board, and we'd be happy for you to introduce yourself to folks here, anybody who doesn't know you, and if you want to say a few words, please do.
Mr. Secretary, thank you. I'm Richard Stewart, and I represent the 28th Senate District, which includes Westmoreland, King George, Spotsylvania, Stafford, and parts of Prince William County. And I hope I can be a productive member on this board. And thank you all.
Thank you, Senator. Certainly appreciate all your partnership on land conservation and many other issues in our secretariat, and look forward to working with you on this this board. So when we last met in September, we kicked off 3 different grant rounds, and we're going to give a quick update on 2 of them, and then of course we'll discuss in further detail the action item today, which is the award for the Surrey Skiffs Creek mitigation grant round. Importantly, the pre-application report to the General Assembly that we have to just get a sense of what kind of demand there is out there for foundation grants is working through the review process at DCR. It may be close to being completed actually today, but preliminarily it looks like we've received around 60 applications requesting almost $80 million to conserve 32,000 acres of land. So certainly the amount of demand out there outstrips the amount of grant funding that we have. That's not a terrible problem to have. It means we'll get to pick really good projects, but certainly there's a need for to see additional funding in the future. But once that report's finalized, we'll share a copy with the board. Our traditional VLCF grant round closed on November 30th. Looks like we received 30 applications requesting $10.5 million to protect almost 16,000 acres. So staff is going to be meeting with the interagency task force this month to score all those applications and prepare the recommendations for the next board meeting. Also at our last meeting, there was a request to establish a stakeholder engagement ad hoc subcommittee to talk about the VLCF grant manual. In your meeting materials, you'll see that 4 board members have been appointed to that. With the current meeting restrictions in place due to the pandemic, we can't really spend a lot of time on that today, and we expect that the subcommittee will meet in the future as conditions permit. So now looking just at today's agenda, we've got one business item to take care of. Do we have, first of all, a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting, the September 22, 2020 board meeting?
Mr. Secretary, this is John Paul Woodley. I have an amendment. I was present on the 22nd of September. I asked that the minutes be amended to reflect that I was present and participated.
Thank you, Mr. Woodley. Would someone like to move that amendment?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mike, can we call roll on the minutes or the motion as amended?
Yes,
do
sir.
we need to do 2 roll call votes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any other amendments or discussion?
I sent one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Elizabeth. Go ahead.
Sorry, I sent one into Mike. It's a minor one. It had me voting and also abstaining. And I'm a multitasker, but not that much. So I asked to show that I abstained on that one.
Okay. Do we need to? Sorry. Is there anything else?
So, Secretary Strickler, this is Mary Carson Stiff. If it's possible after we vote on the amendment, if I can just revisit the ad hoc committee to add an additional person after the vote.
Well, let's do the vote, and then I'll speak to that request.
Perfect. Thanks.
Do we need to, Mike? Do we need to do Ms. Andrews' amendment separately?
No, so we can do it all together. Just to the motion.
Okay, great. Let's call the roll on the motion as amended to adopt the revised minutes.
Okay. Secretary Strickler,
Yes.
Mr. Lazaro,
Yes.
Mr. Copenhaver,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Ms. Stiff,
Yes.
Mr. Volk,
Yes.
Dr. Casey,
Yes.
Ms. Imhoff,
Yes.
Ms. Booth,
Yes.
Mr. Woodley,
Yes.
Senator Marsden, Senator Stewart,
Abstain since I wasn't a member at that time.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Mr. Beamer,
Yes.
Ms. Powell.
Marsden votes yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Powell?
I think I may need to abstain since I was not present at the.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, the motion carried.
Great, thanks, Mike. Ms. Stiff, back to your question about the ad hoc committee. This is something that we discussed, and that I agreed that I would appoint both members as the chair. So I'm not going to revisit that in terms of having the commission take up requests for additional members today, but I'm happy to talk to you or anyone else about it offline. But we need to stick to the agenda item today.
Okay, I'll email you.
Thanks. All right. Mike, thanks again. Next up, Linda Crow with DCR is going to present the 3 Dominion Surrey Skips Creek grant applications we received and the staff recommended grant awards. So Linda, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I am trying to get this to go into slide mode, so you'll give me a second. There we go. Well, as an overview, and for those of you who are joining us for the first time, to remind you, this is from the 2017 restricted funds that came in from Dominion Power when they put the power line across the James River at Jamestown. And the Virginia Land Conservation Foundation received $12.5 million to mitigate for adverse impacts from that power line. In 2017, we made a number of grants, and $1,145,829 of that funding was unallocated from that original grant period and is available for the 2020 grant round, which we're currently in. Also, just so you know, this money is governed by a memorandum of agreement between the Army Corps, Dominion, and other state signatories. Any questions about that? Okay, the primary focus areas for this funding are 1, battlefield conservation, specifically emphasis on the Battle of Yorktown and Fort Crawford, and development of public interpretive programs and signage. The second focus area is landscape preservation, with an emphasis on projects within the James River watershed, particularly those benefiting historic properties. And 3, landscape scale conservation that will lead to precluding future river crossings and inappropriate shoreline development within something called the area of potential effects. And that's an area shown on this map. I apologize for the quality of this map. We asked to make another one, but Dominion requires us to use this map, which is in the memorandum of understanding. I'll show you, oh, there we go. If you can follow my cursor, this is Jamestown Island here. Over here is Hog Island, Wildlife Management Area. This dotted line shows you the actual power line crossing. Down here, just for additional reference, is Chip Oaks State Park. And we'll be actually looking at one of our projects, which is in the area of potential effect. We received 3 applications for a total funding request of $2.2 million, which obviously exceeds the amount that we have available. But since we put the grants out for, since we made that request for proposals, one of the projects that was funded in 2017, the DCR project that's protecting the Grafton Ponds at the Yorktown battlefield, that project has come in under budget. It hasn't closed yet, but between the appraisal and the actual boundary line survey, DCR is able to relinquish $300,000 of that $3.6 million grant. So what we have available for these 3 applications now is a little north of $1.4 million. Any questions so far? Okay, then let's take a quick look at the applications. Here's where they came in. The American Battlefield Trust submitted 2 proposals. One is another proposal on the Egger Tract, which the board funded at the $300,000 level back in 2017. That project hasn't been delivered yet. They're requesting additional money, as you'll see in a second. That's over in York County. The Atkins Tract is another American Battlefield Trust project at the Glendale battlefield, and that's in Henrico County. And then DCR submitted a proposal for the Cedar Fields plantation in Surrey County on the James River. And I'm sorry, my cursor keeps disappearing, so I may or may not be able to use it. We'll start with the Egger Tract. That received the highest amount of points. And that's largely because it has tremendous historic significance. It's located in, it preserves property at the Battle of Williamsburg. It's part of the Peninsula Campaign. It adjoins other protected property, including the Colonial Parkway. It's a simple acquisition of 250 acres, and it's either adjacent to the site or may actually be the location of a 17th and 18th century plantation that utilized enslaved persons. Part of the greater Carter's Grove plantation. It also includes, it's included in the floodplains resilience and the protected landscape resilience categories of Conserve Virginia. Here's a picture of the tract boundary. And as you can see, it joins the Colonial Parkway, which forms the northern boundary. Any questions about the Egger Tract? Then we will move on to the Cedarfield Plantation. Here's another map. It shows you a large part of what we just talked about, the area of potential effects. And the smaller purple area is 232 acres of Cedarfield Plantation, located right there on the James River. This property is right in the viewshed of Jamestown, the Colonial Historic Park, Chip Oaks Plantation, and Hog Island Wildlife Management Area. It's identified also in Conserve Virginia's scenic preservation layer, over half a mile of shoreline right on the James River. This project did not rank as highly as the other 2, and for the primary reason that although we suspect it has as much historical significance as almost anything else on the river, it's never been officially inventoried by Department of Historic Resources, and so it really didn't appear in their database.
Linda, Linda, this is Clyde. I'm sorry if I could interject. There was a revision of the scoring where this project actually ended up ranking number 2 after the easement was negotiated with the landowner. A layer of public access was added to the easement, which increased the scoring that this is now the number 2 in terms of the scoring of the 3. So just wanted to add that information.
Thank you. And I'll also say that Roger Kirchen with Department of Historic Resources was on the review committee. And of all the projects, he felt that this one hit the spirit of the Surrey SCIF's funding more than any of the projects that we received in the second grant round, largely because it is right on the James, it's right in the area of potential effects. And he's confident that if they were able to spend more time on this property, that it would tick all of the historic boxes. Here is another map. This is the property boundary map showing some of the shoreline on the property. I chose this map also because while this project did not rank quite as highly for immediate threat, you can kind of see the type of development that does happen in Surrey County and is happening on either side of this project, although currently the landowners don't have plans to sell the property. The property is about to undergo a change of hands. The landowner is aging and would like to do something to protect the property as quickly as possible. Clyde, would you like to add anything else about Cedar Field?
Just to add that if you look on the map, again, it's directly across the river from Jamestown. And while there was no Civil War battlefield here, so you don't have that level of historic documentation, but I am 100% certain that when the settlers at Jamestown were venturing around the area, they would have frequented right across the river here. And again, while not well documented, there also have been numerous Native American artifacts found on the. So again, while the written history may not score in the historic category, I think that additional investigation, as you pointed out, would definitely tell us that this is a very historic property.
Clyde, can you please expand on the public access? There's 2 questions in the chat about the public access provided by this project.
Yeah, so this, if you were to zoom out on this picture just a little bit, you'd see that Chip Oaks State Park is about 1.2 miles downriver from this. And so the easement is a very strong easement. The easement will allow guided tours by DCR staff. It will also allow archaeological and educational field trips on the property. The only limitation is it has to be done guided by DCR staff and prearranged with the landowner. But other than that, it's the landowner is very willing in allowing folks to come visit and see the property, and that is in the easement. And was there another question in the chat on that?
No, it was just about the public access.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about Cedar Field?
Clyde, this is Dave Marsden. What do you think the primary attraction of people wanting to go see this particular property, which is adjacent to the park, I understand? What would be the compelling reason to make that trip upriver to view the property?
Sure, absolutely, Senator Marsden. So we had our natural heritage staff evaluate this property, and we found numerous occurrences of both the highest level globally rare and state rare G1, F1 plant communities. There's several of them along the creeks that would be protected in the easement. There also is an extremely rare geological formation along the beach. And in the past, there have actually been classes from William and Mary that have gone over to see those particular geological formations. And then also it would be our intent, Senator Marston, that working with our interpretive staff over at Chip Oaks, that we would then periodically be able to arrange tours to go over to the property. It's for both hiking as well as seeing these really unique geological formations.
Thank you.
All right, and then we'll look at our third and final project, which is the Glendale Battlefield Atkins property. And here you can see property in green that's protected in whole or in part by the American Battlefield Trust. This property lies within the battlefield study and was part of the Peninsula Campaign. It's also located in the Gravel Hill community, an historic African American community founded in 1777. It's also located in the study area of Malvern Hill Battlefield. This is the fee simple acquisition of 39.4 acres, again in Henrico County, and it had layers in the cultural and historic preservation section of Conserve Virginia. Here's a picture of the tract boundary, and you can see how it joins protected land, and it fits in very well with existing conserved lands. So without ado, here are our funding recommendations. The DCR Cedar Field easement purchase we're recommending, as well as the Atkins fee purchase. The reason for this is because both of these properties have the potential to close either by the end of the year or shortly after the beginning of the year. We can fund both of those fully at the existing level of request. The money is available. And then the further recommendation is that anything that is left in the Surrey SCIFs fund after all the funded projects have closed would then go to the American Battlefield Trust for the Egger tract fee purchase. And remember, they already have a $300,000 grant for that property. And further, we think the Newport News Waterworks tract that DCR is working on will probably have additional funds after that closes as well. So we do recommend funding DCR and the Atkins property in full, with remaining funding to go to the Egger tract.
Linda, this is Clyde again too. If I could just add a little bit more. First, about the Atkins tract. This is an amazing piece of property. In 1777, as was mentioned, the owners of the Curls Neck Plantation and subsequently Malvern Hill ended up starting to free several of the slaves as they started to question the legitimacy of slavery. And there were numerous slaves that were freed, and they were actually given this property in this section of Henrico County, and that community, African-American community, thrived pre-Civil War. Ironically, in 1862, the Battle of Glendale occurred just to the east of that property, and the community was somewhat decimated as a result of that battle, only to turn around 2 years later, and the Battle of Second Deep Bottom ended up on the other side of their property. It was about 800 yards that separated those two battles, and this African-American community was caught right in the middle of those two battles, and subsequently that community declined, ironically, after the Civil War. But it has remained a very vibrant community. And I will add that Henrico County is very, very supportive and interested in that particular project. Regarding the Egger tract, I have spoken to the American Battlefield Trust about this. This is a very complicated transaction. The total purchase price on this is somewhere over, it's going to be over $9 million. And so the VLCF funding is a minority portion of the funding. We are working as the sponsor with the American Battlefield Trust for obtaining funds through the American Battlefield Preservation or Preservation Protection Fund program that's going to be funding the majority of this. And the American Battlefield Trust believes that with the additional funding, and as Linda mentioned, I think that we'll probably have potentially an additional couple $100,000 in addition to the 300 that we already have available for this project. So I think we'll be able to make that work. And Ms. Stiff, I see that you had a question in the chat. Very limited. So the Cedar Field easement allows 0 subdivision. It allows, there is currently one house that's probably about 2, is not a contributing structure. And the easement allows only 2 houses not to exceed a combined 6,500 square feet. So that is one of the tightest easements that I have seen. The property owner currently do not live on the property, but they are investigating the potential to rebuild on the site of the existing house. 5.3 acres that would allow no subdivision whatsoever and allow only 2 houses, which is a lot tighter than many other easements. And I will tell you, I would throw out this easement that's been drafted on Cedar Field as what I would rate as the gold standard. And not forgoing the fact that, as Linda mentioned, it's directly in the area of impact. But it's 3,400 feet on the James River, and the easement provides 200-foot riparian buffers on the river. And then it also requires 100-foot buffers on all of the creeks along, as well as wetlands. So the minimum requirement is 35 feet, so well beyond those. And I will tell you that right now 42 acres are in cropland. The vast remainder of the property is in mature hardwood. And the easement also limits timbering to be done with, it has to be done with forest management plans, and it can't be done in any of these resource protection areas.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chrisman. And the structure that's existing, your internet cut out just a second as soon as you were talking about the existing structure. Is it the one that's at the end of the lane that kind of looks like it has a nice view shed of the river?
Yes, that's correct. And there was a historic home that was built there in the 1700s that long since burned down. This was a relatively modest farmhouse that was built there probably in the 1940s, and it is in disrepair, and probably the appraisal on the property says it doesn't contribute to the value of the property at all. So I think that it could be a good site for a future home, but right now it's not inhabitable.
Thank you.
Clyde, we had one more question about the property from Elizabeth Andrews in the chat. She asks, wasn't there talk at one point of having a hiking trail running from Chip Oaks through the adjacent property? Maybe it's called Chestnut Farm, that had a conservation easement put on it a few years ago. Is that going to happen? And if so, could that be extended to this property?
Well, I'm not familiar with that, so that's something that we could look into. As I mentioned, it is about 1.2 miles from this property downriver to Chip Oaks. And I believe there's a couple other, as Linda showed, that there is development pressure around this property. I'm not sure how contiguous that is, but that's certainly something that we could look into. But I really don't know the direct answer to that.
Secretary Strickler, if I could clarify. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Director Chrisman. If you look at the map, you can see Chip Oaks to the right. You can see the purple outline for Cedar Field. In between, right adjacent to Chip Oaks, and I'm pretty familiar with Surrey. We spent a lot of time there. There's a farm, I think it's called like Chestnut Farm, and I thought that there was some kind of a conservation easement put in place at one point because it is directly adjacent to Chip Oaks. And I just thought that there had been some talk at some point about having, you know, the ability to have a good hiking trail throughout that area. It'd be lovely to be able to connect those properties. I don't know what's provided for in the easement document.
Well, that's useful information. I was not aware of that, so we'll definitely check into that and to see if that is a possibility for a future opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments for Linda or Clyde?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the projects.
Thank you, Bob. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion?
Is that motion for approval of all of the projects or?
Yes.
What? Okay.
If not, Mike, would you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Secretary Strickler,
Yes.
Mr. Lazaro,
Yes.
Mr. Copenhaver,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Ms. Stiff,
Yes.
Mr. Volk,
Yes.
Dr. Casey,
Yes.
Ms. Imhoff,
Yes.
Ms. Booth,
Yes.
Mr. Woodley,
Yes.
Senator Marsden,
Yes.
Senator Stewart,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Mr. Beamer,
While I support this out of an abundance of caution, I will abstain.
and Ms. Powell.
Yes.
Mr. Secretary, the motion carries.
Mr. Secretary, this is Andrew Jennison. I didn't hear my name called.
Sorry, Mr. Jennison. My fault. Mr. Jennison.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Mike, and thanks everybody. These all seem like really exciting, good projects, and glad that we could get some money out the door to them today. Before we kind of talk about what our next meeting might be, Sue, are there any public comments in the chat box, or have you received any requests from the public to say anything about the meeting?
No, those, we've already addressed all the comments that were shared. Thank you.
All right. Very well. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we'll have a regular VLCF grant round meeting early, hopefully in the new year. We'll get back to you all on scheduling that and get the remainder of our $10 million appropriation out to hopefully some more very worthy projects. So thanks again. Hopefully I'll see some of you all before we all break for the holidays, but if not, you know, have a good holiday season, and certainly you know, everybody stay safe and do your best to stay sane as we're all waiting on a vaccine. Fingers crossed. Thanks everybody. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.